The United States makes the UN work when it wants it to work. And that is exactly the way it should be, because the only question for the United States is what's in our national interest.
My name is John, and the International Criminal Court is now in session. It is June 2nd, 2024, and today marks the very first video in which I am using my brand new Lenovo Legion laptop. I had a Dell XPS 15 for 4 years. That was given to me by my brother, which I paid for a few $100s in. It served me well, but the network adapter, as you all know by now, was cooked. So, this new computer, which I'm using right now, performs at a much higher setting than the old one. And while the video itself is in 30 frames per second, like as you can see right now, you will certainly not have any issues in like the maps popping up and not popping up and such. Everything will remain consistent going forward. So yeah. So new hardware, new era. Let's begin with the news. So, to first start off, the Herson front, nothing. Everything seems to be pretty much the same. Cranky's gray zone, in which many of the troops that were deployed there for the armed forces of Ukraine have now been redeployed to Kharkiv or Kharkov Oblast in northeastern Ukraine, in Zaporozhye Oblast in southern Ukraine. There have been reports of some Russian advances just south of Orkiv or Orkov. And I wouldn't be surprised if part of the Russian campaign this summer is partly focused on taking Orkiv and Huleopol. Now, if the Russians were to seize Huleopol, then they have a direct line to Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. And if they take Orkiv, well, then the path to Zaporozhye City, which is the regional capital in Zaporozhye Oblast, will also be open too. Though we have to also see here on this map that there is still a lot of work to do for the Russians, even if they were to take Orkiv from the armed forces of Ukraine. Tons of work. It's a very far drive. Yeah. And next up, we have the Velika Novosilka sector. Now, as of this video, as of this recording, the villages of Staromaysky and Urozhainy are tightly contested right now by the Russians. And I'm not going to lie, I think by the time I get back from my trip to New York City, which will be on June 11th, I wouldn't be shocked if both of these fell by then. But I don't know, maybe it will take another 1 to 2 more weeks before they're cleared. But one thing is absolutely certain. The Russians are definitely going to likely be back on the outskirts of Velika Novosilka within maybe a month or so from now, if they're really serious about making that next big push. Though I don't think Velika Novosilka is as big of a priority for the Russians as other fronts are, but let it be known, the Russians are definitely pushing in this area, and they're definitely going to retake everything back that they lost during the infamous 2023 Ukrainian WOW offensive, or counteroffensive, that is. Ugledar, not too much, though it seems pretty certain now that the Russians have launched a limited push to, I guess, take over the road leading up to Ugledar from Konstantinivka all the way down to Ugledar itself. And Vudain, which is right here, will become a likely target for the Russian forces, since this will pretty much seal the fate of Ugledar. There's only 1 or 2 roads going into the town itself. 1 and 2. But the main road, which is here, could fall to the Russians as soon as later this month or in July. But yeah. Peresko-Vivka, this is definitely going to fall to the Russians soon. There's not much to really defend here. They're going to abandon it. Just watch. And then, yeah, we'll then get the battle for Small Konstantinivka. And now moving up north, we got Krasnogorivka. Now, Krasnogorivka is one of the biggest and the final towns in the Donetsk Oblast. And this is literally the largest town left on Donetsk outskirts that has not yet been taken by Russia. Now, around 50 or so percent, like literally the whole town has been cut in half by now by the Russians. They now control roughly half of it, with only the residential areas and I guess the commie blocks here remaining, which is right here, as you can see on my screen. And once those are all taken, then the Ukrainians may have no choice but to flee the town. Though I am hearing that they're being very stubborn right now in doing just that. And I heard the Ukrainians are going to fight tooth and nail to the very end. And they will refuse to leave Krasnogorivka that easily. Though I did hear that the Russians did seize control of the City Hall building here, which is like located just south of this school and the Central Park. But yeah, the Russians have the overall initiative in Krasnogorivka, and it's only a matter of time before they take full control of the town, and the residents within Donetsk city itself can sleep more easily at night. Because Krasnogorivka was like literally the strong point where the Ukrainians literally gathered up all their, missiles or bombs to target Donetsk city, which has been under Russian occupation for 10 years now. But yeah, so Krasnogorivka likely going to fall either later this month in June or in July. Now, going up north, Nataliove, finally locked up by the Russians, both the village itself and the outskirts, the north and south. The Russians now have pretty much gained the full initiative too, especially west of Simonivka. And if anything, it locks up Avdiivka for good. So all these empty fields here, the Russians are now advancing on them, and it's only a matter of time before the Russians close up that pocket. And the next step to closing up that pocket is Yasno Brodivka. Once Yasno Brodivka falls, then this area here will be gone. And it will only bolster Donetsk city and Avdiivka's defenses even further. It's hard to believe that only a few months ago, the Ukrainians were literally defending everything here, but now everything is just gone, just like that. With a snap of finger, it's just gone, just like that. I mean, it's crazy to believe that it was only months ago when the Russians were not even here, but now they are. And to go up north, by the way, the Russians are advancing into Novoalexandrivka, and by taking this, they will get closer to this road here, which connects Konstantinivka, like the big one, to Pokrovsk, which is the largest settlement in central Donetsk Oblast. And if anything were to happen to Pokrovsk, Russians will then have a direct pathway to Dnipropetrovsk as well, just like in Zaporozhye Oblast, like with Huleopol. Now, I don't think they're going to really go for Pokrovsk for a while because it's very difficult. I mean, there's a long way to go before they reach that. But what I'm expecting to happen is the Russians are going to try to take Karlivka right here, Yasno Brodivka, Novoselivka, Persha, Novopokrovsky, Sukol, Hinivka, and try to advance down this railway line here until they hit this settlement here. It's a pretty medium-sized town, Novohordivka. Though I will say I do think that the next battle in the Donetsk Oblast is going to probably be Kharkove or Saladove. If Karlivka falls, then Saladove is pretty much on the menu. And if Saladove were to fall, then Pokrovsk is basically wide open. Though I don't necessarily know if that's really the priority for the Russians this summer, because a lot of things are happening on the front. Tons. But yeah, Orcharitine, again, we're seeing the effects of its fall in this area here, west of Avdiivka. And yeah, we'll watch and see how that area develops. Now, Chasiv Yar. A lot of interesting stuff has happened lately. So, Russians are trying to expand their control west and south of Avdiivka, though they're having a difficult time because the Ukrainians don't want to let go of these high ground areas here, because then the Russians would then just advance towards Bielahora and Stupchi, Stupoki, or right here, which would in turn lead them to to Konstantinivka. Sorry, not Krasnogorivka. My bad. But yeah, so Klashivka, Ivanivsky, Russians are advancing in these areas here. They're trying to secure their bank of the Sovietsky Donetsk Canal. And speaking of canal, the Russians are trying to advance, though so far not successfully, within the micro canal district, though their fortunes, though, may start to change a bit, though, because news has just come out that the Russians have seized majority of Kalenia, right here. And by doing so, and by securing these forested areas here too, the Russians have now effectively taken full fire control of the micro canal district in Chasiv Yar. Thus, this neighborhood here is going to become the first of the dominoes to fall within Chasiv Yar itself. And then the Russians will then be able, from Kalenia, will be able to cross the Sovietsky Donetsk Canal and to enter Chasiv Yar proper. Now, I have heard, and there's even geolocations confirming this, by the way, that the Russians have crossed this canal, and they're already inside. So, Chasiv Yar is effectively now in danger of falling to Russia. Though I will say I don't expect this to completely end until July or August. I mean, I don't know how long it's going to last. I mean, Chasiv Yar doesn't even have that many buildings. Though I will say I think the most challenging part for the Russians is when they get to the town center here. But otherwise, the residential areas should not be that difficult for them. And literally, the town itself, I mean, the central area is going to be the most difficult. There's going to be a lot of urban fighting, though I'm sure the Russians are definitely going to respond with FAB spammed all over the place. But yeah, so Kalenia is mostly under Russian control, and it's very likely that the Canal District will likely fall this month in June. So yeah. Now, Kupiansk direction, the Russians are advancing in areas that they lost during the infamous Kharkiv Wow offensive. And I heard that they want to go for this area here. This bit of strip of land here that is a part of the Lugansk Oblast or Lugansk People's Republics. And I'm not going to also be shocked if those areas fall within a month or two, but I don't know how much commitment they have to this part of the front because there's something really big that we got to talk about just before we end today's video. And it has nothing to do with Lugansk Oblast. The Russians have not yet started their assault on Stepova Novosilka, though I will say or Selivka, sorry about that. Though I will say that it is inevitable that they will try to take this settlement too because they want to get on the road to Kupiansk, left bank and right bank Kupiansk. And by taking this little village here, the battle for Petropavlivka will effectively start. And then after that, we will then see the start for the Battle of Kupiansk, like part 3. Because there were 2 battles of Kupiansk. The initial Russian invasion of Ukraine, and then you had the second Battle of Kupiansk, which took place during the Kharkov Wow offensive in 2022, when the Ukrainians retook, September 2022, when the Ukrainians retook it. And now advancing to the Kharkiv or Kharkov Oblast. Not much change here. Though I will say Ukrainians have stabilized the situation in Kharkiv, north of Lipsy, though the Russians are basically spamming the whole village with FABs. Guys are getting sent into the meat grinder, dying every day. It's awful. I literally cannot share the footage that's being shown on Telegram. I just can't. It's too graphic and too difficult to watch. But yeah. So, Ukrainians are counterattacking, though they don't seem to be putting up a big effort yet to recapture everything here, north of Lipsy. And then, to the east, this is the Volchansk area here. The Russians have, so far, stabilized their control over the areas, like, north of Volchansk, and within the, left bank of the Sovietsky Donetsk River. So it's the Donetsk River itself. And within Volchansk itself, now personally, if you ask me, I don't think the Russians control this much of Volchansk. I think the Ukrainians control much more than they actually do on this map. Suryak made a mistake in which he had the entire Volchansk, like northern part of the town, under Russian control. But now it's been revealed with geolocations and such that that he was wrong, along with other mappers. And the reality of the situation is that the Ukrainians still control the commie blocks here, along with these blocks of neighborhoods here. Now, I'm not expecting Russia to push any further unless something else happens, and you're all about to know what that is in a moment. But yeah, the thing is, so far, Russians appear to be at the very tip of, like, north of the Volcha River, and so far they control the whole situation, though Ukrainians are fighting tooth and nail to keep the entirety of Volchansk under their control. And now, one last thing. Other parts of Kharkiv and Sumy. Now, I have been hearing reports, take it with a grain of salt, that the Russians are going to launch an offensive in towards Zolochiv right here. I don't know if the Russians ever controlled it during 2022 when they initially invaded Kharkiv. And, of course, re-entering the Sumy Oblast. Like, returning to the Oblast for the first time since April Fool's Day 2022. Now, I don't know if they're actually going to do it. Though I will say, if I'm the Russians, I would absolutely gamble on entering Sumy, because it doesn't look like the Ukrainians seem stretched enough. And also the Donbass offensives are not going fast enough too. So, considering how bad the situation is in Volchansk and north of Lipsy, I'm not going to be surprised if the Russians expand their offensive, like this summer, in Sumy Oblast as well. And I don't even know if the Russians are serious about capturing Kharkiv in 2024, but if they really want to, they have to return to Sumy. They have no choice in doing so. Now, I've heard some guys claiming, especially the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, claiming that Russia is gathering over 300,000 troops to capture not just Sumy, but also Chernigov and eastern, like Kiev Oblast, and I guess maybe a chunk of Cherkasy. There's no evidence for this whatsoever. None. Though I will say, I won't be surprised if the North Group, which is the army group that the Russians are using to attack Kharkiv with, ends up expanding. Like, they expand the number of troops from, like, I don't know, like 20, 30,000 to 50,000 to 75 to 100,000 plus. The North Group is in its infancy. I know it. Most of you who watch my channel know it. And I honestly believe that it's only a matter of time before the force gets big enough into which they'll launch another offensive along the left bank Ukraine, which is the area ranging from basically here in near, like, basically in Bryansk Oblast, all the way down to Belgorod Oblast in Russia. And again, I'm not going to be surprised if the North Group gets activated along the whole left bank Ukraine, because the Russians, to me, have become convinced that Ukraine is not going to negotiate for anything. So the only thing to do now, especially with the announcement that they're going to be allowed to use Western weapons, is to take the entirety of left bank Ukraine from, well, Ukraine. So they now virtually have no choice but to seize the entire eastern half of the country from the enemy. Because, let's be honest, the announcement that they're going to be allowed to use Western weaponries is just a further, like, escalation to the whole conflict within Ukraine itself. And as such, it's going to force Vladimir Putin to do things that he hasn't done in a while, and that's to definitely make a big push. Now, nothing is guaranteed. I could be wrong, and we could just be seeing more meat grinder offensives in Chasiv Yar, Krasnogorivka, southern Zaporozhye, Kherson. I even heard that the Russians even did some landings on multiple swamp islands in Kherson, though it's not that really important, so I'm not even going to talk about it. And yeah. But yeah, keep an eye out on Chasiv Yar, definitely Kharkiv and Sumy. And also keep an eye out, if I were you guys, on the front south of Lake Novoselica, because I'm not going to be surprised if the Russians get back to the positions that they were in before last year's summer Ukrainian WoW offensive. And once that happens, there's definitely going to be a lot of more questions being sent over, because the media and especially Ukrainian people themselves are now asking themselves, is the war even winnable anymore? Are we going to have to settle for giving up chunks of the country to Russia? A lot of questions right now are being asked by the Ukrainians. Like people, not the government or the media, but the literally like the Ukrainian state media, that is. The mainstream media is already asking the questions, but the Ukrainian media is definitely going to have to face a difficult dilemma here. How do you deal with people who are calling out your lies, calling out your propaganda and fake news? How are you going to do that? So that's going to do it for today's video, everybody. Just to make this clear before I go, I'm going to New York, as I said earlier in the video, from June 6th to the 11th. So there may not be a Hague video next week because of that trip. And for those reasons, in case if I'm not able to make a video, I will let you guys know in the community post, or even in the pinned comment on this video too, if I'm unable to do anything. And yeah, so I hope all of you guys have a great day. Stay safe, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye. Have a good one.